Dave, I want to talk about the Elite Series roster updates. There were 14 cuts, and we got to talk about that word cuts because not everyone was cut due to low points. Some people left by their own decision. So we're going to get into the details of that. And then there were 11 additions through qualifications. So let's break that down more specifically. We have this nice graphic here. I ranked these actually, Dave, by years in the Elite Series. Some of these guys have been on the Elite Series for 10, 20 years. So to see them cut is kind of shocking in a way. But like as we've talked about in the past, it's just part of the deal whenever you're in a sport, right, Dave?
Absolutely, Jordan. It's bittersweet to see some of these guys go. But my first initial thoughts are, man, I'm happy that we finally have a roster. The speculation has come to an end. I've been saying that, as the process has been unfolding, that, at the end of the day, you really can't determine who's going to fish on a tour until the league officially puts out their roster. A lot of things happen. People decline invites, which we will see a example of that here. Leave tour for other reasons, so on and so forth. But yeah, man, bittersweet, like I said, to see some of these guys go. Bernie Schultz, a 20-year Elite Series veteran, did not make the cut, did not make the roster for 2026. I'm sure he will still be involved in the fishing industry in some way, shape, or form, but a great representative for the sport. But one of the guys that you will miss seeing out on the Elite Series, but performance did not add up for him and will not be fishing in 2026.
Yeah, Dave, that's definitely obviously the most notable example when you rank them by years on the Elite Series. He was on the Elites for 20 years, and the list goes all the way down to people being in just for 2 years, which is the minimum that you can be on the Elite Series. On the far right column of this table, you can see the reason why these guys aren't coming back. Something that I mentioned at the top of this segment is we don't use the word cut for everyone because some people left on their own. So as you can see here, most of these guys were cut, but some of them had other reasons. So let's get into that next. These are guys that left for any reason besides getting cut by being too low in the standings. So the first example we're going to talk about is Scott Martin, Dave. He announced during the 25 season that he would step away from bass. We have some quotes here from Bassmaster and Sports Illustrated. Again, we will link to these articles down below so y'all can check these out. But what's kind of your reaction to the Scott situation, Dave?
Everybody knows the story on the Scott Martin situation by now. Scott decided to voluntarily leave on his own accord and pursue other options. He and his daughter Hillary are fishing a big team trail that they announced recently, and also concentrating more on media and their television show and social media, YouTube, things like that. So he's on to doing other things, fishing a lot of tournaments down at Lake Okeechobee if you follow him. So he's going to be just fine, just choosing a different career path. The next angler we're going to talk about is Matt Heron. Similar situation, for Matt, a little bit different. This happened at the very first event at St. John's River. Matt made the conscious choice after being on the Elite Series for 17 years to also step away. He will be fishing the NPFL in 2026. A totally different situation, a guy who requalified for the tour, Ray Hanselman. If you subscribe to the Best on Tour newsletter, a couple months back, I did an article on revisiting the Hanselman effect. Hanselman accomplished something that will probably never be accomplished again. Won all 3 events in a Toyota Series division, including a championship. An absolute stick from Texas. Came on the Elite Series. Had a pretty decent career on the Elite Series. Requalified, but chose to step away as well. So those are the 3 anglers that will not be returning to the Elite Series, but were not technically cut. A couple of other anglers I think that stood out to me that there have been a lot of questions about, a lot of buzz, a lot of talk about. Ben Milliken. We had some social media comments when you posted this earlier. It's like, man, how does Milliken make 2 classics and not return? Milliken, pretty solid. I think a little bit misleading there because one of the classics he made was for the Open win when he was still fishing the Bassmaster Opens, which is a huge accomplishment. But Milliken, if you recall, and you referenced the previous article you did on how you stay in, these guys only have 2 years. When you come in as a rookie, you only have 2 years to to get things going and kind of cut the mustard, so to speak. Milliken was right there on the bubble. Really didn't have horrible seasons, but just not enough to requalify for the 2026 Elite Series. If you follow Ben Milliken, I'm sure he is going to give full explanations on his feelings about that. He's done a little bit kind of leading up to it, and man, I'm sure he's got a lot of stuff on tap with all his media properties that he's involved with, and who knows, he may be fishing some tournaments as well, but probably back to filming and creating great YouTube and social media content.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. Actually, one other minor thing I wanted to mention here, Dave, is the fact that Ray Hanselman declined his invitation. Obviously, that opened up a spot for someone else, right? And our sources inside the industry tell us that it was Mark Menendez who was actually on that cut line there that got to take that last spot that opened up once Ray declined his invitation. So, man, close call for Mark, but that's great for him. He gets another shot.
Yeah, if you saw Mark's recent appearance on Bass Talk Live, man, he was really on pins and needles. He knew there was a possibility. Ray had kind of clued him in during the season, and it was a chance that he may not return to the Elite Series. And Mark kind of was that guy on the bubble. And man, Mark's a staple in Bassmaster. If you've been following Bassmaster, Mark's been doing it a long time. Has had success. One of the nicest guys on tour. Does a great job for his sponsors and his companies. And he will be returning in 2026 to the Bassmaster Elite Series and have a chance to right the ship, so to speak, and get above that cut line for 2027. So we wish Mark the best with that. And then we have our Elite Series qualifiers. We've kind of talked about that on previous shows as well and done some content on it. Great graphic there you just made on who is going to be coming in for the Elite Series in 2026. The only kind of addition there that I think possibly we had not talked about on a previous show was the champion of the Bass Nation National Championships, Nick Trim. Those guys obviously have the option of declining that invitation, but it seems that Mr. Trim will be joining the crew on the Bassmaster Elite Series for 2026, and it looks like a very stout, very strong field that will be testing the waters of the new format, one forward-facing sonar tournament and then one non-forward-facing sonar tournament, kind of mixed up the schedule and mixed up how those guys, initially, once they started the qualification process, thought that they would be fishing in 26, but no doubt some of these guys are going to shine and be players on the Elite Series field.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the notables I want to mention on this qualified list is actually Russ Lane. So all of these guys on this list of 11, except for Russ Lane, are going to be considered Elite Series rookies, right? It's going to be their first year on the Elite Series. However, Russ is a familiar name for a lot of people who've been around the industry for a long time because he was actually in the Elite Series himself from 2006 when it started until 2018. So he is a familiar face on the Elite Series. It's going to be really cool to see him come back, Dave.
Absolutely. Russ has done a lot of good things in the sport of bass fishing, earned, I think his career earnings are well over $1 million. So definitely not a rookie, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out. I do believe that his Bassmaster Elite Series career average and record will come into play. So Russ may have, getting back on the Elite Series, he may have more than the 2 years to kind of continue to do his job there, whereas the guys that are coming on as actual rookies will only have the 2 years for their finishes to count.
The best on tour.